Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to the May 21st meeting of the Parks and Community Services Commission. I call this meeting to order at exactly 6 o'clock. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Kamala, would you mind leading us? Ms. Fatua, the roll call, please.
Let the record reflect all commissioners are present except for Commissioner Houston.
Great, thank you. And just want to let members of the public know that it is a special meeting tonight, which means that it's a bit different than our usual meetings. We do not have open public comment. Any public comment tonight will need to pertain to one of the agenda items. We also will not have commissioner comments tonight, and we will not have a director's report. So if you are interested in those, come back in a few weeks for our regularly scheduled meeting. And with that, we begin with special item number 1, the Parks and Recreation proposed user fee increases. Director Gruner, I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, Commissioners. So periodically, the city will evaluate its current fee structures, and those are all the fees applied across the city. And tonight, we're going to have a presentation by our Finance Department and their consultant regarding the recreation fees and some of the recommendations that are being brought forward to you guys tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Finance Manager Anna Acosta, and go ahead.
Good evening, Chair and fellow Commissioners. As Director Gruner stated, the city is currently evaluating our user fees, and we have engaged ClearSource to conduct this study with us. Tonight, we have the user fees that pertain to the Parks and Community Services Department. At this time, I will turn it over to our consultant, Terry Matson.
Thank you so much for your time and attention this evening. I'm going to make my way through a brief presentation, and then I'll be available to receive any feedback or questions you have. The purpose of my presentation is to orient you broadly to the citywide endeavor, and then to focus in specifically on Costa Mesa Community Services fees. So just by way of reminder, in terms of an agenda, we're going to think about stuff that is common to California. So it applies to you, it applies to your neighbors, it applies uniformly in Northern California. And then the second part of this presentation will be specific to Costa Mesa. So broadly, the way we think about this concept of user and regulatory fees, and the reason we even think about them is because as a city, we have, we try and prioritize use of available city resources. And our primary resource as a city would be like tax dollars. We think of this as like property tax dollars, sales tax dollars, and so forth. And most of the time as communities, we say to ourselves, let's use our tax dollars towards services that provide broad community-wide benefit. We think of this as like public safety services, public works services like pothole repair and park maintenance services, those kind of activities where we say the community as a whole is benefiting from this activity. When we see a direct receiver of service, we frequently try and recover the cost of that service from the receiver of service so that we can say to ourselves, we're using our broad dollars for broad purposes and we're recovering costs when we do a specific purpose. Most commonly, we think of this as like permit processing. And most of a city's fees come from like permit processing, construction review, plan review, and so forth. And that is a significant driver of fee studies and this idea of cost recovery for an individual service provided. But a city, when it thinks about its fees, it thinks about the entire portfolio of fees. So not just construction permits. It says to itself, well, do I have to review operations that are hazardous for compliance with the fire code? Do I have police fees that link to specialized services and so forth? And one of those categories is this idea of recreation type fees. And that is a focus of this broad study. So when we meet with the city council, we're going to tell them broadly, we've examined all of these categories. But for this evening, we'll focus in on your particular category. One of the things we like to remind the city council and folks like yourself is that nothing in this study and nothing in any proposal here examines or proposes changes to taxes, assessments, utility rates. So those things that we sort of encounter on a day-to-day basis in Costa Mesa, they are not a purpose of this study or this discussion. This is like discrete request for service. Like I want to participate in a program, or I want to reserve a city space for a special use like a party or a meeting or something like that. Costa Mesa looks at its user and regulatory fees as part of its standard operating practices. So every single year, the fee schedule is examined, there's updates made. Most of the time, the updates are like inflationary in nature, and a lot of times, the community services world sort of stays unchanged unless there is direction to change it. Periodically, Costa Mesa and other cities in California do these types of formal studies. They do them like every 3 to 5 years, something like that, but they're not doing them every year. They're doing them periodically, and in the in-between years, they apply like inflationary adjustments to most fees. So they say if the regional costs are going up by like 3%, let's take all our fees and move them up by 3%. But again, community services, they don't really move without direction from either the city council or this commission. They're not just like a routine inflationary adjustment. There's more thought because of this idea of community goals and values. But everything that we present to the city council does say, hey, there is a cost of service and there is a cost recovery level that is identifiable even in the community services world. And then they can make decisions about whether they like that and want to move in that direction. The reason cities do these types of studies, the number one reason is because, oh, I'm getting like a Amber Alert.
Yeah, it's an Amber Alert.
They want to comply with legal requirements. So your fee schedule is like 50 pages long, and it includes what we call regulatory fees. In the regulatory fee world, you want to make sure that you're not sort of exceeding your cost of service and turning yourself fundamentally into taxation, right? These are not taxes. They're fees for recovering costs. And so we want to encourage compliance with legal requirements. But another reason cities do this is because when they recover the cost of these services, they are by definition freeing up general fund resources to be used for some other city good. And when we recover our costs of service, we position Costa Mesa to be able to continue to meet the service level expectation of the community. So everything you've heard so far is common to California. Now we'll talk specifically about the fees that you have a particular interest in. And this is focused on parks and community services fees. And one of the things we think about is this idea of how much does the Parks and Community Services Department sort of expend or cost in a given year? And we would say, the total cost of parks and community services is about $10.5 million a year. Of that, $1.8 million comes from fees and charges. So we would say cost recovery from fees and charges in Costa Mesa is about 17%. That means the general fund dollars, those tax dollars, are being used to cover $8.7 million of departmental costs. That is common in California, so it's not unique to Costa Mesa. If we look around and we see sort of like, there's an industry called National Rec and Park Association, and it does this an annual nationwide survey, and it says, hey, be careful interpreting the results of the survey because it's nationwide. And Oklahoma might look different than Costa Mesa, and Costa Mesa might look different than Fresno, right? Even within California, you can look significantly different. But what they say is out of these responders, if 1,000 agencies respond to this survey, that typical cost recovery level that we're going to see from fees and charges is about 24%. And that's nationwide. And what we would say is we see a little bit less than that in California typically. And the reasons is because of that like state mandated, you use a lot of seasonal labor and your seasonal labor costs are increasing over time. And so California just has higher costs a lot of times than other areas. And so if you're charging, relatively similar fees, but your cost basis is higher, your cost recovery levels are just going to be a little bit lower. But overall, this cost recovery level of 17% looks in line with what we would expect to see from an agency that says, hey, I do contemplate the idea of cost recovery and I do value the idea of cost recovery. I just want to marry it with the idea of I also value community services and people's ability to participate and quality of life enhancements that come from parks and recreation type services. So now in your fee schedule, in the citywide fee schedule, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fees. But specifically to your area, there are 68 unique fees. If we say to you, what is happening with those 68 unique fees, because we think of you as sort of like a broad 30,000 foot level, what is happening with these 68 fees? We would say 61 of them, or about 90% of them, are proposed to remain unchanged as part of this study. There is one new fee proposed. There are 5 fees that we'd say are proposed to increase, and 1 fee that it can change depending on the scenario required or requested. The reason 90% of your fees are proposed to remain unchanged is because we do see that 17% cost recovery level. And so we say to ourselves, the overall cost recovery, unless council or this commission sort of directed us to go somewhere else, we would say the cost recovery level looks within the realm of reasonable for an agency like Costa Mesa. And then when we connect with staff and say, do you feel like there's any places of particular interest where you're sort of below the market or you feel like you're actually over the market, those kind of things, we connect with them and they say, I feel like for the most part, we have recalibrated our fees from time to time. And so in most areas, we feel like the fees correspond to the level of demand we're seeing. And I'm sure you're all aware of this, but I'll just speak it out publicly. Costa Mesa also differentiates between user categories. So it says, I will prioritize resident nonprofit groups. I will prioritize Costa Mesa residents over for-profit entities or non-resident requesters. And so there's differentiations in your fee structure to accommodate that. And in particular, like if you have like youth sporting groups, it also makes a distinction for youth sporting groups that say the vast majority of my participants are Costa Mesa resident addresses versus half of my participants are Costa Mesa and half of my participants are from outside the city. That would be a different fee. You would treat them differently from a fee setting perspective. So overall, staff said, I think overall we're in good shape with these fees, but there are some areas where we feel like the demand and the idea of wanting to keep these facilities in good working order and sort of continue to meet that service level expectation, we think there are a few opportunities for refinement. And so we'll walk through those specifically. So I'm going to talk about the fee that is proposed to, we would call it a new fee. This is a field rental fee that is associated with tournament use. So we'll go back to each of these separately. I'll just give you a brief rundown. So field rental fee associated with tournament use. And then the fees that are proposed to increase, the 5 of those are linked to sort of reserved use of city park space. And remember, nothing nothing prohibits anyone in Costa Mesa from going and making use of Costa Mesa Park space. It's if I want to dedicate this space to my particular activity for a point in time, that is the only time there's a charge imposed. So this is for reserved use of park rental space. And you have different categories like resident and nonprofit renters, non-resident renters, commercial renters. You assess a refundable damage deposit, and then you have a film permit that originates in the Community Services Department. Finally, this idea of fees that could change based on project criteria. There is a senior programming event fee. So if I'm a senior and I want to participate in Costa Mesa senior programming, occasionally they might offer like access to certain different, let's go to this place as an event or an activity. And maybe that event or activity has an admission fee or a transportation fee. Instead of just setting a fixed number, we're proposing to align to whatever that activity or excursion, the actual cost of that activity or excursion. So if you're saying to yourself, what does a fee increase look like? Here's the 5 fees that are proposed to increase. What does that fee increase look like? For the most part, what you can say to yourself is, it's about a 10% change, or a 20% change, and so but it looks like small dollars. So it might say you might say to yourself, I'm increasing these fees by 20%, but the reality is you're increasing fees by about $5 for one of your residents or a nonprofit group that wants to come out and rent park space. $5 per hour would be the change. And your fees just scale accordingly towards non-residents and commercial organizations. So we just followed that logical scaling and then just did some rounding for administrative efficiency. So instead of having a $77 fee, we have a $75 fee. Instead of a $122 fee, we have a $125 fee. The deposit, you collect a deposit when more than 50 people want to attend or reserve a space. And the idea is once you get that kind of number, it's not uncommon that your team would have to potentially do some repairs. And so you're telling the renter, you can absolutely have this back if we receive the space back in good working order like we gave it to you. We see these deposits going up lately because of the idea that your costs of repair have actually gone up. So it's just intended to have a greater incentive for the applicant to realize, hey, I need to value this space. On the film permitting side, what we just did was modify this film permit application fee. They take significant amount of time if you are dealing with one to coordinate, and so we're just adjusting that upward slightly. So I talked about the fees with changes based on criteria, the fees proposed to increase, the new fee for field tournament rental. So if you look at your existing fee schedule, there are rental rates for organizations that want to use the fields for specific sports purposes. So they want dedicated hours, and so they know they can have a game at a certain time or a practice at a certain time, and they're gonna be able to show up and that field's gonna be ready for them. The idea here is that if somebody's wanting to make use of those spaces for something beyond your normal sort of base season, like your seasonal activities and your practices and games, we would have a fee that would apply for tournament use. We see this commonly. And so what we're proposing is, in this schedule, it says whatever your base rental rate would be, if you're asking to use the field for tournament use, we're going to increase that fee by 35%. And so it still prioritizes your user groups that you say, hey, you are truly what we would think of as like we just want kids to get out here and participate. There's no cuts. There's nothing like that. Everyone plays philosophy, right? There's no bench warmers. They are prioritized in Costa Mesa. They would continue to be prioritized even if they scheduled a tournament. I think their rates would not, they would be $0. You do not charge currently for that type of program. But when you get into the areas where you say, hey, you're now starting to be a more competitive environment, or an environment where some of these participants are likely not even Costa Mesa residents, but they're looking for access to our spaces, they would increase by 35% for tournament use. And essentially what that says is if somebody's paying $25 an hour today, they would pay about $35 an hour tomorrow. If they're paying $35 an hour today, they would pay about $45 an hour tomorrow. I'm rounding those numbers, but it's about a $10 increase. And that's the idea behind that change. And so you would just say, depending on the demand for tournament services, they would just have a premium applied. If I believe I will turn it over to Parks or Community Services staff here soon, but I think my understanding is that the department looks for direction from this commission in terms of, do you feel like these proposals are reasonable, or do you have alternative recommendations or thoughts that you would like to have relayed to council? Sooner or later, we will take that whatever feedback we receive to you and work to schedule a city council meeting where the council considers that entire gamut of fees, those 500 fees. But when they consider the 500 fees, we're going to say, by the way, prior to meeting with you, we met with the Community Services Commission and we met with FIPAC, and here was their feedback and thoughts. So thank you so much for your time and attention. I'm available to receive any feedback or questions you have.
I would just like to add that it will not be on the June 2nd council meeting. We're working to finalize the date, and you will be notified. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that presentation. Normally, I send it around for commissioner questions, but I'm actually going to take chair's privilege and start us off. I just have a few questions. Actually, I have many questions, but I'm just going to ask a few, and then I'll send it down the row. And this might be a combination of answering, so happy to hear from whoever it makes sense to hear from. When was the last time the fees were evaluated? And I know I heard and read that it's on a yearly basis. We have never seen them before. So I'm curious, when were they last evaluated?
I can go ahead and speak to that. A couple years ago, the city went to council to create the consolidated master fee schedule, because historically we didn't have one. So that at that time we used, I believe, ClearSource as well to put all those fees together and create our master fee schedule, which is now on our website. And this was back in 2023. Later, a couple years later, last year, June 2nd, or I believe in 2025, we went to council and we asked for a CPI increase of 3.3%. And that's when, at that time, the Parks and Community Service fees were not part of that CPI adjustment, so there was no adjustment made in particular to those. And brings us forward to today, where we've been conducting a cost recovery study to really evaluate our fees, and this is that next step that we're working on now.
I'm sorry, I don't know what CPI stands for.
Consumer Price Index, like regional cost inflation.
Okay. So it sounds like, if I'm understanding it correctly, it was begun in 2023. There was a revisit in 2025 with a 3%, but that did not apply to Parks and Community Services.
That is correct. And historically, the city has always had fees. It's just we didn't have a consolidated master fee schedule.
And so when was the last time that fees were evaluated and or when was the last time that fees were changed for any of these?
So it depends on the fee category. So even, you remember we said you have 68 different fees. Some of them were adopted at different times, but we did try and sort of like do some detective work and say, when did this fee come into being? And it looks like many of them were right around September of 2017. Some of them were September 2019. But I would say those are your 2 years, 2017 and 2019, the vast majority of your fees. If you say, when did this fee get formally adopted? The fee that's in place today, those would be the 2 years.
Okay, so it's fair to say 2017, 2019, that's when the fees for what we're evaluating were last or first revisited. Okay. What kind of public input has gone into this presentation now? Can you talk me through what that public engagement or public input process looks like?
Every time we go to council to propose a master fee schedule or any updates, that does require a public hearing. So that's the time when we would receive any specific public input at that time. And then typically, we are required to post the proposed schedule in advance. So that's typically 10 to 15 days in advance. So when we would post the new proposed schedule. And that's an opportunity then.
So were any of the user groups, maybe I'll ask it a little differently, were any of the user groups that could be impacted by these fees involved in any sort of public input process? And one of the reasons I'm asking this, let me ask a slightly different question and then I'll come back to that question. Are Costa Mesa United folks? I'm thinking in particular about one of the new fees, which is the tournament rental. Will this impact any of our partners in the Costa Mesa United team?
I can speak to that, Chair. I would say it wouldn't impact probably 90% of those attendees. Most of those attendees are Group 1 users, which have no fees associated with their use.
Okay.
So if you think about what 35% of zero is, it's still zero.
Okay. I ask because we are, as you can imagine, it's really important for us, and as a commission, public engagement is our number one value. And so with something like this, because we haven't had much time to evaluate it ourselves, I'd like to hear what the public engagement processes look like. So it sounds like there's probably some work to do around that.
And
What was,
From my own reference and to sort of strategize, one of the things that we think about as practitioners is this idea of, so as Anna mentioned, there is like these mandatory noticing and outreach processes that go with every fee study. It is just by law. You notify the public via multiple newspaper publishings. Anybody that is specifically asked to be notified, you notify them separately and apart from the newspaper. But normally, if somebody said, hey, ClearSource, what do you think we're supposed to do? What level of effort do you think we're supposed to do? We would say it varies based on the level of provocativeness of the change. And so we would have said, we feel like the changes here are non-provocative and that they wouldn't merit a lot of outreach beyond what is sort of already just mandated. Do you feel differently than that?
yes, but that's okay. I appreciate that answer.
Okay.
Taking it in a slightly different direction, what has been so I'm really interested in the study that you referenced, and I think that's where I'm trying to piece it together and imagine what the study entailed and what the data looks like, because of course, we're just getting 5 recommendations. So for example, what kind of comparative analysis did the study do with other cities? And I'm really interested in it at a granular level. And I think there are a few of us on the commission that we really do appreciate the data and it helps us make decisions. Like, talk to me about a comparative analysis between Costa Mesa, Newport Beach, Huntington Beach. What are the fees for not for all of these, I don't need you to go through bit by bit, but I would be curious to know, for example, what some of the rental fees are like in a comparable city in Orange County. How do our fees align? Is that something that the study looked at?
It did consider that, yeah. So we do 2 things. The number one thing we care about is this idea of cost of service and cost recovery. That is what we're fundamentally tasked with identifying. And Costa Mesa does keep a lot of data at a very granular level. So you can see costs by specific division within this department. So lots of different cost layers. And then we think through the idea of citywide overhead that supports the department. So we think about the cost layers, we think about the revenues, but also we say to ourselves, are these proposals that we as a practitioner feel non-provocative and rational to us? Do they feel rational within the region? And we also felt comfortable that the answer to that was yes. So if we think about the idea of we're proposing to increase park rental fees, let's say, and today, if I'm a private resident or a nonprofit group that wants to reserve park space, it's going to depend on the number of people that I want there. But let's say I have less than 50 people And the number today in Costa Mesa is you pay $15 an hour, but you have a minimum of 4-hour rental. So you're gonna pay $60. Tomorrow, if the council changed these fees to this number, so you would pay $60 today, tomorrow you'd pay $80 for that 4-hour rental, a $5 per hour change. If we look around at other agencies' park rental, park reservation fees, we looked at Lake Forest, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, and you're gonna see very similar, they're gonna have different structures and so forth, but Lake Forest says, if you're a resident or a resident nonprofit, you're gonna pay us to rent a park between $50 and $100. So today you pay $60, tomorrow you'll pay $80 in Costa Mesa. In Lake Forest, you pay between $50 and $100 depending on your user category. If you're a non-resident or commercial renter, you're gonna pay $150 to $200 for that park space. In Costa Mesa, you're gonna pay today you pay $100 to $200. Tomorrow you're gonna pay $125 to $225. Huntington Beach, same scenario, $75 for the resident group, $150 to $250 for the non-resident community services. Newport Beach differentiates by like, are you renting a gazebo versus other park space? Gazebo, $45 an hour for your resident. Other park space, $17 for like a very targeted non-profit type group to $50. So we do feel like you're in the range on the tournaments. So we looked at every fee that we're proposing to modify to say, if we're asking you to change it, do we feel like this change is within the realm of rational? On the tournament fees, which is the other one you're being asked to consider modifying, Huntington Beach says you're gonna have a base rental fee of whatever your normal rental fee would be, which is exactly what Costa Mesa has. So they say, you don't pay me extra for the field, you pay me 10% of whatever the gross receipts are from your tournament. We feel like that can be complex from a cash management perspective and an administration perspective. So we've just said, come up with an alternative structure that's not linked to their gross receipts, but it still acknowledges this idea of tournament. Lake Forest says, if you want to rent a field for tournament use, you're just going to pay me $400 a field, period. Newport Beach, there is no specific call out for tournaments. They have their field rental fees. There's no specific call out for tournaments. San Juan Capistrano says, if you want to make use of tournaments, you're going to pay me $270 as a one-time amount to sort of accommodate this tournament, to acknowledge the idea that I'm probably going to have to staff it extra and so forth. So there's a broad range of structures, and we're open to any sort of recommendations or refines, but we tried to come up with something we felt like was reasonable that you could test. So the idea is always just moving forward, and our goal is non-provocative, watch, develop history, and see, did that work, and do we need to continue? But the idea should be refinement on an ongoing basis as you develop more history, right? So that was our mindset.
Maybe I should have prefaced it by saying I'm actually interested in probably being a bit more aggressive around all of our fees. So that's where I'm coming from, which is not, I don't. I think the fee recommendations are totally fair. That for me isn't an issue. Engaging people is. So is the study available to commissioners? Like, would we be able to see that sort of? I'm interested in the comparative analysis. Like, I'm really interested in thinking about what are some places that, as a member of the community, I would feel like I'm looking at this city and looking at what they are able to take in. How would I feel as a citizen increasing our rates? Is that data available to us?
Yes, we can release it at the time when we're prepared to go to city council. But in the meantime, I think it's something we can release.
Okay, I think if you're looking for so I guess one thing I would say is that kind of data would help me feel a bit more comfortable supporting something like this, right?
We can release the information regarding the parks and community service fees, so.
Okay, great.
And I just don't want you to get your hopes up. So that the study that we provided is hundreds of pages long, but the comparative analysis that I just spoke out to you is prepared for the purposes of this presentation. You will not find So you're hoping to see what does
I'm
Huntington
okay
Beach?
with hundreds of pages.
Oh, yeah, but you're hoping to see what does Huntington Beach charge for this? You're not going to see it.
Got it. Will I see an executive summary of how it compares to others?
Yes.
So the data points aren't in that study?
Not
But
what
but you have that data?
We just spoke it out to you. Yes, it exists, and we can give it to you in chart form. We can follow up with you, but if I say, I'm going to hand you this report that has been prepared for City of Costa Mesa, it does not have that chart.
How will the city, because I understand you're a consultant, right? So then how does the city inform its decision makers without that level of granular detail? I guess I'm wondering. Yes, welcome, sir.
I just respond to that. I just want to clarify, make sure we understand, basically what you're asking for. And if my understanding is correct, you wanted to see the fees that we're recommending to change, how that compares to our neighbors.
I'm interested in, yes, but I'm most interested in how all of the 61 fees that aren't being touched,
Okay.
how do those compare to what
To our
neighboring
neighbors.
cities charge?
Yeah. Well, we can certainly, have a table that, has all of our fees. And maybe if, when you say our neighbors, do you want to be specific as to what cities that you're looking at? Is it Santa Ana? Is it Newport Beach? Is it, maybe if you could tell us specifically maybe a couple of cities, then we can actually go back and develop a table that, list our fees and list the fees for the other cities.
I appreciate that. I will say that that is what I would want from a consultant, is to say that sort of analysis, right? That analysis, so identified 2-3 cities that are comparable in terms of size, in terms of population. And so when we came back to make this recommendation, I'm just going to say, for example, we looked at Huntington Beach, we looked at Garden Grove, we looked at whatever.
Okay.
And because we determined as the consultant that those are actually, comparable to Costa Mesa, and this is what they're charging. That's the kind of, and I'm going to pass this on to fellow commissioners. I don't want to totally hijack that, but this helps me understand a little bit better as to why, we're only I'm beginning to try to understand why we're only changing 5 fees.
Can
Yeah, I can,
I jump in real quick too?
Sure.
Just, the finance team did consult with the Parks and Community Services Department too, and in general, most of our fees are related to our programming fees where, it's the service and we're not trying to increase it for a day camp or a youth program, right? So when we looked at and they consult us and like, what should in reality we study? What can we study that doesn't affect something that's directly program oriented? We look at park rentals, right? We look at something where it won't affect our sports user groups, the primary group ones, but what has the biggest impact? We look at, okay, tournaments come in from our groups 3, 4, 5, 6 and have a big impact on our fields. Can we look at what a tournament fee would look like? So some of those were at the general recommendation of our department when they approached us and said, okay, well, what fees don't impact programming?
I appreciate that. I'm looking at a lot of these that aren't program related. So like room rentals, drop-in swim, like the laps. So, okay, I am going to stop. I have other additional questions, but I'm going to pass it along to other commissioners. Who would like to go? Vice Chair?
Hey. Has anyone ever told you that you have like a really calming voice?
No, thank you.
It's quite meditative. I'm sure sometimes you're not always delivering good news, so that probably helps. So yeah, I had a similar surprise, I think, looking at this. I think just full transparency, I think we were expecting sort of even like a CPI increase on a few of these. And I'll just start off the bat with, from a values perspective too, what I think shouldn't be touched, which would be our youth programming, our sports programming, and our senior programming. And I do feel that reflects council's values as well, and is just what's needed most in our community, considering how expensive it is to send your kid to a summer program, swim classes, etc. in Costa Mesa. So if you take those out and say, you know what, we're not gonna touch those, I was looking at, facility rentals, park rentals, deposits. Definitely a lot of wiggle room there. And increasing commercial use for any of those as well. And yeah, basically what I prepared and happy to share with you guys or share for the rest of the commission the next time we see this is I have our current rate. I just did from 2017 to now is about a 35% CPI increase. So maybe just for those categories. And then also just a comparable to other cities. And for the most part, funny enough, like the CPI adjustment kind of falls within what I found with other cities just for those categories. So event rentals, park rentals, the event lawns, and then the deposits as well. So like just to give you guys an example, park rentals right now are at $20. They've been at $20, or they were at what, 15 since 2017. So even like a suggested OC comparison would be 25 an hour versus a CPI increase. Actually, I did the CPI based off of the 20, but it's 27, right? So these aren't huge increases like we will get through this together. We will get through a 30% increase from 2017, you know? And I think I am feeling just a little bit I'm feeling a little bit uncertain about what the macro goal is. Like, we're talking about cost recovery, but only covering our cost 17%. I wish we were covering more because we're just coming out of our CIP conversation where if we had more general funds, we could invest in more neighborhood parks. You know, so I know it's like a push and pull in different directions at all times. So yeah, I'm reading the report, but then I'm also hearing like, oh, I think we could close the gap more in more areas. And I would support increasing in those categories. I think you might get support from council on those as well. I think too, we're coming fresh off of the senior transportation program discussion where out of nowhere those costs had to go up or the entire program had to be ended. And so I I'm also coming from a conversation where we're increasing our rates at the Costa Mesa Sanitary District as well because landfill costs are going up. And so I feel like it's better to do these like small incremental increases over time rather than hitting people with like a huge increase out of nowhere. And I understand what you guys mean about then you have to notify the public and do the whole thing. And of course, nobody wants to increase anything ever. Another thing that I thought was interesting is how some items you pay a fee plus staff time. I think that would be a completely reasonable way to reconcile our costs is when you're renting a facility and there has to be staff there, you have to also cover the staff's time. I think that's totally fair. At my company, we do event and rentals all the time, and unfortunately, that is how they do it, or they'll charge us also for security's time. So if that's a more clean-cut way to say, you know what, we're not increasing the actual fee, but we are increasing that you have to cover staff's time, I'd be comfortable with that. Question, I don't see community gardens, golf course, or tennis center on here. Any reason for that?
So specifically to the golf course and tennis center, because those are leased facilities, and through an agreement established, those fees are set by them and as approved by the city manager per their agreements.
Yeah, I knew that answer logically, but so many people come to us to talk about those fees. I think it would be great for that to come through us when those agreements maybe are up or coming up so that we do give the public an opportunity to speak to them. Do they even go to council though? Like, Is that wishful
Well,
thinking?
there's an
If it's just
RFP
with-
currently out for tennis center operations, and so once that RFP process is complete, that agreement would come to council, and it would have an establishment and a list of user fees with that, and that would be an opportunity for the public to weigh in on that too.
Cool.
Yeah, but typically, once the agreement is in place, for example, like the golf course, the golf operator submits a, request to increase the fees with the proposed fee amount, and then that gets reviewed internally, and the city manager would have to approve it in order for those fees to go into effect. But that wouldn't necessarily come back to council.
Yeah, I think we should be proactive with those two entities and just making sure that we're ensuring the public knows about it and inviting them. I think it's great that we utilize third parties that are better equipped to run those facilities and programs anyways, but those do, I get asked about those a lot. So what about community gardens?
I think we might need, remember I told you we were piecing fee schedules together and we grabbed some from 2019, 2017, and because over time, what happened in Costa Mesa prior to like 2020-ish or 2023 is, I think different departments established fees at different times. And so I have a suspicion we did not pick up the community gardens fee, and we will bring it in and make sure it's included here. May I, the same way I confirmed my understanding from you, may I confirm my understanding of your comments? Because I feel like the broad comment I heard was aligned to the chair where, hey, there's not a fundamental opposition to increasing fees within the realm of reasonableness and all those kind of things. And there might be good in doing that because it avoids like some future potential radical changes. And your idea of a potential strategy would be say, hey, since the last time these fees were adjusted, the change in cost in the region has been about 30%. So a logical starting point for to sort of communicate that out would be that that's a 30% change that's proposed. That averages out to like a 4% change a year if you had just done this every year. And then that helps the council and you as commissioners say, I could swallow that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think if you parsed it out by like the type of fee,
Yep.
I would say we would probably be more in support of subsidizing costs on things like the youth programs, the senior programs, and sports. But as it comes to commercial use, facility rentals, deposits, park rentals, especially for like large events, I think I across the board would support a CPI increase
Okay.
of 30%
Yep.
immediately.
Okay.
And my last question is, it would have been great to know usage data, because what I don't want to do is completely deplete this like supply and demand that I'm sure we have very established now. And so it would have been awesome to be able to say, all right, if we could move the needle 30% for these large companies, the outcome is going to benefit, our cost recovery X amount. And maybe we could project like 15% lower usage, but it would still ultimately be worth it. And so I'm sure you got that data, right? Participation data so that you could do projections. Like, how did you calculate the 71K?
We get it in macro numbers. We get it in broad numbers. Like this budget unit brings in $100,000. We don't get the line
Not
item
by
details of
individual.
the $100,000. No. We can see if it's available in the reservation system. We understand what you're asking for.
Yeah.
We do look at it at the more macro level, but we're happy to try and accommodate that finding. Out of curiosity, if the data came back and said one of two things, the data came back and said, okay, let's apply this sort of rational logic. And that rational logic puts you at the upper end of the fee spectrum compared to your 2 or 3 neighbors. Would you still support that, or would you say, I no longer support that? My primary consideration is to not be a regional outlier.
Based on what I found from OC cities similar population, I did allow the model to look at San Diego County as well. They're very similar to just the CPI index.
Okay.
So
So as long as we're in the
I
range.
don't think you'd find, I don't think you'd find that big of a difference. And that's why I'm saying, just for clear communication, I'm just gonna go with the CPI index for those categories. Say you came back to me and said that, and I said, you know what, those feel too high. I would possibly be open to a very, very modest increase on the other programs.
Got you.
Very modest though, right?
Okay.
Just to cover the gap. So yeah, I think that is definitely how I would summarize what I would feel confident. One, taking to council. Two, taking to the public. I think these are completely reasonable. It's actually astounding to me that we haven't raised them since 2017. So congrats, guys, for keeping the books balanced off of 2017 numbers. And it's due time. It's due time. Let's put those funds into some other parks that need it.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wright. Commissioner Garcia Arcos, would you like to go next or? No? Okay. Commissioner Ledger.
I just want to say, sorry to disagree with you guys, but I don't think we should be increasing more line items. A big chunk of our city is low income, and right now, a lot of people could barely afford food. Let's not take away their enjoyment too in certain areas. But I also do understand we need money, so my thoughts on this is like stopping from losing money more. So my first question is to the city staff, are we checking for permits like on the weekends when people are having parties at the parks? Are the park rangers checking that they do have permits? Are we counting, their attendees to make sure that they have the correct permit? Is there anything like that going on?
We don't have anybody dedicated to park permits, but what we do have is on everybody's park permit, they're able to call park rangers if they're on shift, but also our ambassadors that we have from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. at night. They also roam our fields and parks to make sure that there's nothing out of the ordinary. We send out a park master reservation list every Thursday or so to all of our PD partners. Everybody in our Parks and Community Services Department gets that master list so they know what's going on at what park and where.
And when somebody is found without a permit, are they fined or just kicked out?
No, so our parks aren't operated that way. If you want to guarantee a shelter, then you reserve it. If it's open, it's a first come, first serve. Now, we also have a separate end of not discussing the fees. We have our park ordinance that we will be bringing back to you eventually when we talk about the rule of 10 versus the rule of 25. We're going to update that again and bring it back to you. So, but otherwise, most cities have a shelter reservation system where it's first come, first serve if you don't want to reserve it. But if you have a park permit, you're guaranteeing that reservation.
Okay. And then, let's see. What, there's a charge for a gas or electrical event. What is that?
So if you want access to our electrical outlets at a park shelter, you pay for us to open that outlet. Or the gas, I believe it might be like a bounce house, like a generator permit almost.
And then along those lines, so bounce houses, if somebody is using a bounce house in a park without the permit for a bounce house, or in a park like Tewinkle that does not permit bounce houses, is there a fine for that?
So Tewinkle does permit bounce houses in certain areas.
Okay.
So it's very clearly designated, marked areas. And we have a list of pre-approved bounce house partners who we coordinate and communicate with every year because they have to submit some of their documentation, and we give them a map of where they're allowed to be. So if we find, if somebody says there's a bounce house next to the wall that borders the houses at Tewinkle and it's too loud and they're not supposed to be there, they can call our either park rangers or our ambassadors who will go ahead and do what they need to do. And usually it's most of the time we give them a warning, shut it down, and if not, then other actions will take in. But usually it doesn't get that far.
So there's no fine involved?
I'm not sure if there's a fine.
I'm sorry, I just love charging people for breaking rules to bring in money. I really do.
Yeah. And then that would be more, then we get into the enforcement side that PD would have to chime in on who's not here,
Okay.
obviously.
No, that's fair. So what about like food trucks? Do they count as a vendor? Because there is vendor fees.
Yes.
Okay, so what's stopping somebody from just parking a food truck outside of a park?
So there's also rules. So when they come into our office and they say, we're going to have this vendor, we're going to have this, we say, there's a big step process of where you can park, where you can't park, what you can do, how many parking spaces you can be in. So they're given a very big list of what they can and can't do. Now, on the opposite side, it comes down to enforcement of this. And, once something goes beyond what they're allowed and not allowed to do, then we have to take further action.
And then for the film permit, is that $500 per day for 7 days, or $500 7 days, no matter how long it takes you to film?
So I'm going to go ahead and let Ms. Viteri speak to that because she runs our film permit, but I believe it's 7 days, a 7-day period for their fee.
So the $460 film permit fee that you see is per shoot.
Okay.
When we receive an application, it goes to a multi-department review, and the reviewers will determine if the shoot is being held at a location for an extended period amount of time, if it needs to be a separate application. So if it goes beyond 1 week, typically that would require an additional application.
So what requires a film permit?
Per municipal code, any film project that is for commercial use.
Okay, so it doesn't apply to, say, college students or high school students?
No, however, our film projects from students typically go through the film permit process. However, those fees are waived for them.
Okay, that's good. And then does that count for photography?
The film permit applies to any video, photo, still, and commercial production. So it could be multiverse type of productions.
I'm sorry, so what I meant is a lot of professional photographers like to use Fairview Park to take family photos and prom photos. So do they have to apply for a permit?
So if the project is not profiting in a commercial way, a film permit is not required.
But if they're a professional photographer, somebody's paying them to take these pictures, they should use a permit?
The person who's obtaining the product is not benefiting commercially. This is for their own personal use.
Okay,
It would
got
not
it.
require the film permit.
Got it, sorry. Let's see, that might be it, but hang on. Oh, why do we charge separate for administrative fee? It feels like nickel and diming. Why can't we just like roll that into the charges?
I believe the administrative fee was one of those fees that was taken to council in 2017. That was a proposal. I'm not sure, I wasn't here then, but I know that was brought forward, and I'm not sure the reason.
It just seems like instead of charging like $35 plus a $5 fee, it could be just charge $40, and doesn't seem like we're trying to squeeze every dime out of them.
At the time, I know that we have a recreation software program that charges a user end fee, and I think that was to recoup the cost of the charges that we were being charged per transaction on that software.
Okay, and then what's a special event?
I'm going to let Ms. Viteri take that one as well.
A special event is any event that is open to the public, impeding a private right-of-way, hosting outdoor fairs and exhibitions, held at a public location and expecting to bring in 50 or more attendees. The special event permit process in itself is very case by case, and some events may classify as a special event depending on just the location, the sizing, the kind of temporary structures that you're bringing in, if it's impacting residential areas, if it's having amplified sound, multiple vendors, cooking, beer gardens. And so it's a very big umbrella to answer for a special event.
Okay, no, that's fine. I was just wondering what it defined as.
A lot of things.
Okay, and then so the last one is speaking to clear source based on a couple, or something that was said by my fellow commissioners here, is getting comparable cities. I do require that as well, because Lake Forest is not comparable at all. that is a completely different way of living down there. So, and that's it for me for now. Thank you.
What, may I?
Yeah.
Clarifiers? So to confirm I heard you correctly, you differ from the chair and the other vice chair in your initial thoughts in terms of these facility rentals and so forth. You would say, hey, I'm not opposed to just leaving them unchanged as of this moment. That would have been your initial leaning. You're not, you're.
No. So what you proposed,
Yeah.
I do support.
You would support
The
it as
small
proposed.
changes, I don't support the broad changes they support.
Got you. Okay, thank you.
But when we're asking for more data, I do want more comparable cities to Costa Mesa because you used Lake Forest a couple times and that is completely different from us.
So the same way the interim finance director said, does the chair have any comparable cities in mind? Do you have some specifically in mind?
I do have when we worked on our values document, I had a lot of comparable cities, but I don't remember which ones were in California because I looked across America for cities with similar demographics as well as the same size.
So
Really,
you're not thinking of like a specific neighbor
I
as of
could
this
get
moment?
you specific cities if you need later. I'd have to go back to my
I
data.
feel comfortable identifying them. I just am surprised you're saying Lake Forest is nothing like us. So I would have been wrong on that. So I might be wrong. I feel like I'm going to pick 2 or 3 good ones and you might go, that's not a good one.
So the difference is Lake Forest is not as active as Costa Mesa. Things are more spread out. To go to a park there for a party is more of a drive, where in Costa Mesa, you could probably walk to a party at a park.
Okay. Okay, I follow.
I just want to
Yeah.
add to that. In terms of cities, yes, it's not comparable. I worked in Lake Forest for 17 years. So I know a little bit about Lake Forest, and why it's comparable is because it's every way that a Parks and Recreation department does a park shelter is very drastically different, and I know that from doing my own research around here. City of Fountain Valley doesn't do park shelter rentals at all, so you can't compare them. Huntington Beach might be closest. You can't look at Santa Ana because it's not even close of how we do it in the 4-hour increments. Some cities do it on a first come, first serve. OC Parks, it's first come, first serve all the time unless it's a really big regional park and you want a rental. Lake Forest is actually very, very closely aligned with how we rent park shelters. It may not be comparable in any other way in our department, but in the way that we do that specific rental, it is comparable. So I just explaining that process. So
No, so along those lines though, is they're not going to have as many rentals maybe as we do because we're more accessible to residents.
It's very, Lake Forest has 30 parks. We have 32. It's very comparable, and they have a shelter almost at every park. So
How many rentals though are they doing is what I'm saying. They may not have as many rentals because they're not as,
I would say
not as many rentals as you can rent them, but
Yeah.
how many are they renting out?
Yeah, I would say their gazebos or shelters get rented out almost every weekend.
Okay.
So that's a little bit of historical knowledge I have.
Thank you.
What I would say, Commissioner, is that I think there are some differences between Cheyenne and I, but I do think there is an openness. And I think the common denominator is that we don't feel like we have quite enough data to make recommendations, or at least the 3 of us that have spoken so far. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. I want to go down the row and open it up for public comment first. Commissioner Kamala, your turn.
So first off, just thanks for the presentation. Honestly, the detail that you did have answered a ton of the questions that I had written down. So thank you for that. Super clear and concise. Also, I'm glad we dug into this to know that I'm not breaking any rules because I have a maternity shoot at Fairview Park myself. Glad I didn't need a permit. I have an active park rental reservation next week. So no bounce house, I promise. It's not on the permit. And my kid just finished AYSO. So I think this is something that had a lot of touch points for me. And thinking through that, I went through kind of a range of thoughts on this, right? When I did the park reservation, my initial thought was, that's pretty cheap, right? That's super affordable. I love it. And then when I saw this on the schedule, I said, uh-oh, park increase. Oh, no. Then I opened it and I saw there really was an impact. So I walked in to the chambers and I thought, this is great. This is going to be a slam dunk. No discussion necessary. We we didn't increase any fees. But then we discussed, hey, well, why didn't we increase fees? Why didn't it reflect CPI? And sensitive to rising costs everywhere, it's something to consider. But in just hearing the presentation and our comments here, I think it's almost like there's I don't want to say two goals, but two different perspectives where I hear you and I forgot the word you used, but basically minimizing impact to the residents. And I love that. But on this side, I also hear, hey, there are all these other pending projects that we have and our resources are stretched so thin. Is this a way for us to get incremental optimize revenue with still that minimal impact to fund additional services? So that's my perspective on it, and I can't say that I'm a slam dunk either way, but that's just my perspective I want to share. My only question is for the seniors special events that was variable. Is there any, I guess, calculation of how that the fees would be calculated for the senior special events?
I think my understanding is the department would say, this is an event we're doing and it has a transportation cost of $10 per participant for this particular event. And they would just say, do you want to participate in that or not? And then the next event doesn't involve transportation. They say it has a $5 lunch fee, but it's trying to not trap you into every event is $8 flat. It accommodates to the particular activity at the time. Am I expressing that correctly?
Yes,
Was
absolutely.
I clear there? The phrase I used was non-provocative. So I still love the idea of non-provocative, if possible, and I don't sense that anyone here is looking to be provocative, but you also are looking to be rational and reasonable. And so the general takeaway I'm hearing, though, is an annualized CPI adjustment since the time of the last study falls within the boundaries of non-provocative. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then I actually did have one more question. Sorry, I can't read my own writing. It was just about the park deposits. I saw that increase. I guess there any data saying how often we don't return the park fees due to the state of the park after the event? Because it seems like 150 that's a lot of people.
I could just say generally, we don't have a lot of park reservations, shelter reservations that hit that number, because usually if somebody's doing that number, it triggers a special event fee. So we hardly retain park reservation deposits, but it gives somebody accountability when they're having extra vendors and, or multiple vendors that helps hold them accountable for the state of the park or the shelter that they're renting. And they're given a list of rules to follow.
Cool, perfect, thank you. I just have cupcakes and pizza at my event, so we're going to be okay.
Commissioner Dorn Parker.
So I kind of want to do an overview as I'm looking, and we're missing some data that would be critical for me. There's this cost recovery concept, and I just want to circle back to our values, which is equitable, being able to plan for resources in different communities, especially those that are higher density. And understanding cost recovery percentage is directly related, circular around, to us offering actually more park amenities, more programs, and quite frankly, more maintenance that we really need help with. I support, and I'm very committed to catching up to CPI. We need resources. Our cost of personnel has gone up. Our cost of equipment has gone up. Everything that makes it so people want to rent. So I believe if we think in terms of a percentage of cost recovery, what would a 24%? I'm hearing your percentages, I think 17%, especially if we protect the level 1 youth sports, our programming after school. Those are our personal residents, and they're in areas that are highly impacted I believe those fees, I agree with that, to especially really look at those to see, can they take the 30% jump, or can we do 5% and 10%? And really look at what those families' impact are that are using those resources. It doesn't help if we raise those so much that's what's then gonna bring other resources, but if those families can't put their children in after school, they can't play the soccer, because we've done a unilateral free jump, that doesn't make sense for our community. One of the other areas that we really haven't looked at, that when you talk about like cities, because I participate as non-residents in Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, and Irvine. Our non-resident fees are either non-existent. I'm going to talk about drop-in pickleball. That's, to me, and I'm going to use the word obscene. When I go by to see, most everybody there are from Newport Beach. They're there because we don't charge a fee. So I think we need to go deeply into our non-residents' fee. My husband, because the swim times here in downtown don't work for him, he swims every day. He goes to Newport Beach, and he's charged double the fee the residents charge. It's still way less than if we had a membership at like Newport Beach Tennis Club where he had a swim fee. So it's not that I think our non-residents aren't as, I think not, it may knock some of them out. They may need to return to their residence cities, but they're using our facilities, which means there's maintenance. They're needing our staff. They're using our equipment. And I think just by raising those and look at cities around us, because that's kind of our competition for non-resident fees, I believe that could be a substantial and equitable way to turn back if we talk about our programming for our West Side residents in particular. Also, I think we need to bake into the city council that it's just an automatic, whether it's CPI or cost of living that the state gives, whatever, because in education we work on COLAs, but I know the cities don't do that. But I really believe we need to look at non-residents and for-profits. Their fees are substantially lower than what they could be and what they pay elsewhere. And so I believe when you look at my overall goal, which is cost recovery, so that we have more resources that can go back into serving our residents, that's my overall conversation, and needing the data to make sure that I'm not crazy just because my personal experience may not be what other cities are. But if we can confirm that, just because when I participate, like in pickleball in Huntington Beach, it's basically 3 times I'm charged. It's still not that expensive, but it's a 3-time rate over, I play with my girlfriends who live in Huntington Beach. But, you know, now we have Costa Mesa. The other thing is, I believe when we talk about organized youth sports, there are certain organized sports organizations that are for profit, and they're making millions of dollars on our sports fields. I won't name the one I found out about. And they're paying $13,000 when their revenue is $2.3 million. So we really need to talk about those level 3 and 4 sports use, because they're really heavily used. And those can go up substantially. I'm not talking about quadruple, but I'm talking about really looking at the data from who's using that is not our residents or that are for profit, and they're charging our residents an enormous amount of money to participate. And we're not charging them enough for what their profit is. And I don't want to, I agree, we don't want to get in a code, I call it code sharing, but where they're having to show us receipts, like Huntington Beach does, that's a lose-lose, and that doesn't really serve us. So that's the overall that I believe a lot of the fees that really serve our residents, especially our heavily impacted marginalized communities and our poverty, especially those that are having significant issues economically. Doesn't mean we don't come back and look at it, but I believe there's many, many areas to get our recovery up to the 24%.
Chair.
Yes.
Things you didn't wish for when you became a commissioner, right? This topic, Thank you so much for entertaining me. I do want to comment on yours because I do want to give you guys realistic expectations just from what I have seen. So you said, hopefully I'm not crazy. I'm not calling you crazy, but I am saying some of those thoughts actually are crazy in the rec world and from a practicality standpoint, and I'll show you why. So, because I don't want you guys holding on to this idea of 24% cost recovery.
I'm not saying overnight. We're not going to go anywhere overnight. We're not jumping fees overnight. But since we really haven't looked at it for 2017 or 19, I'm talking about you can't get somewhere if you don't set the goal of where you want to go. And incrementally, these are areas I believe that we can increase the cost recovery. It's not going to be 24% when you're done.
Okay, yeah.
So I thank you for clarifying that.
I was like, oh my gosh, I hope I'm
Yeah,
not
no. And because I'm one that says we have this idealized in CIP that we need to set aside a certain amount of money for the West Side programming and parks and structures needs. And I'm the one that says we're not going to get there overnight. But let's set aside $200,000 a year in a fund, untouched, because in 10 years, you have enough to do significant difference.
Yep.
So thank you for asking. And then the other thing I wanted to tell you is what I think are most like to do non-residents. I'm not sure about the other ones and like renting shelters, but facility rentals, I think is Newport Beach, Huntington Beach. I do think it's Santa Ana because a lot of that is crossover. And I also think Irvine. When you're talking about facility rentals, you're talking about non-resident fees, you're talking about types of infrastructure they have to bifurcate serving the residents and non-residents and private corporations and filming and stuff. So those are, to me, they may not be exactly like, but they're close enough because our customers would be looking there. So, okay.
Commissioner Dorn Parker, thank you for that. I know there are a few other questions, comments, but I first want to open it up to public comment. If there is anyone in the chambers who would like to make a comment, please come forward. Good evening.
I'll get there.
I'm not rushing you. I'm not rushing you.
Slow. Good evening, Commission. Jay Humphrey, Costa Mesa resident. And to be clear, I'm speaking as a private citizen, not as a member of any board, any committee, any organization. I'm really pleased. You all, without exception, have expressed a desire to recover the cost of providing the services that we do for recreational behaviors and things that people are doing. Every one of you. We spent, I don't know, an hour and 20 minutes getting that story out to make sure our consultant understood it. And I am pleased with that statement. With that thought in mind, I'm just curious. In this, there is not one comment about the fly field. Keep in mind, the city, by their own statement in their CEQA, shall, they use the term shall, pay to relocate the field. That means the city is going to spend $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 putting down a GG, grading and doing all the stuff it's supposed to doing, on top of already having paid $13,000 for a study, on top of $4,000 for grading a number of years ago, on top of monthly types of mowing and what have you, and they're going to put it on the east side. Don't forget that when they put it over there, they're going to put it by your own study in the middle of the overwintering, burrowing owl habitat, which means that federal and state people are going to ask about how are you going to take? And the take cost is about 50 grand to get a take permit that is determined by professional biologists, not by me. Believe me. So those costs are going to be incurred. It is important to keep that in mind. And Liz, you made the comment specifically about non-residents. The people who fly the planes, look at the record for the city. There's only 2 or 3 Costa Mesa residents out of all of those people, and its highest, it was only about 20%. So keep in mind that we're now talking about something you are part about, that this should be thought about on our cost recovery process. I'm not saying they shouldn't be allowed to fly. I'm not saying we shouldn't do something. I am saying if you're going to do fees for everybody else, if it costs me to go and swim in our pool, then it should cost somebody who is going to, in fact, fly a plane. Oh, and by the way, you know that because the runway they're proposing goes straight to just a second, I'll be done, go straight across the street and
Thank you, sir. I'm supposed to cut, I know, I'm supposed to cut you off.
very much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it for your time.
Seeing no other public comment in the chambers, Ms. Fatua, is there anyone online?
Yes, I have Cynthia McDonald. Cynthia McDonald, you may unmute.
Good evening, Commissioner. Cynthia McDonald, Costa Mesa resident. I too would like to address what I see as a significant omission in the staff report, specifically the cost of operating the fly field at Fairview Park. The report doesn't disclose that permit fees for the fly field have not been collected for several years. So really, the fee is currently zero. As a result, the city is effectively operating the facility at a loss with no dedicated revenue to offset associated costs. These costs currently include staff time and compensation for the employee required to be present during HSS events. Even if permit fees were being collected, they would not be sufficient to cover anticipated future costs. Based upon the biological analysis conducted for the Fairview Park Master Plan update, the city will likely be required to obtain the state take permit if the fly field is relocated to the east side of the park. The estimated cost for such a permit ranges from approximately $50,000 to $100,000. In addition, ongoing requirements would include hiring a certified biologist at an estimated cost of at least $10,000 a year, as well as continued staff oversight. When these costs are considered together, the number of permits required to achieve the cost recovery in the first year alone would be substantial, far likely exceeding the current participation levels. Additional capital and operating costs have also not been addressed, including construction of the new runway and related facilities, as well as potential insurance costs associated with that operational risk, because the way the runway is laid out, planes will take off going over Placentia, and when a plane hits a car, there's going to be an insurance claim. But page 2 of the staff report states that city fees are generally intended to achieve full cost recovery, including operating, indirect, and capital costs, unless the council explicitly determines that a public interest justifies reduced fees. To my knowledge, no such determination has been made for HSS or the fly field. In effect, that means the city has been subsidizing this activity for years. At a minimum, fly field permit fees should be evaluated and adjusted to ensure that the full cost of constructing and operating the fly field is recovered, and those fees should be collected. Otherwise, the city is effectively absorbing these costs, which raises the broader questions about equity and how public resources are allocated. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fatua, is there anyone else?
There are no other members at this time.
Thank you. With that, I close public comment. I know Commissioner Ledger, I see your hand. Give us just a minute. Commissioner Ledger, I know you had a few comments, and then happy, sir, to take your feedback, and then I have a few things to say.
No, I just want to say Commissioner Doran Parker's point on the non-residence fees, we could bring in a significant amount of money for doubling non-resident fees. If other cities are doing it too, we should. They have the same facilities we do. I don't want to raise fees on our own residents, but I would support raising the fees on people outside of Costa Mesa. And then was our commenter that just called in, was that correct? We're not collecting fees on the fly field?
So at this time, we are not collecting fees for the fly field. The permit is issued, or we have a use agreement with HSS directly, and to provide us the insurance to cover any type of, incidental damages should they occur. So the users are covered, and they do have to be members of HSS as a member. So they do belong to that club, and the insurance would cover them in the event something would happen.
Okay, thank you.
I see Commissioner Garcia Arcos would like to say a few things. Commissioner.
Yeah, just to kind of, I want to echo a few comments from my fellow commissioners. One of the questions, and I heard this from the public, is cost of operating fly field. I think that's really important after listening to the residents of like what's their concern. I would really appreciate if you can give me a number of how much is costing us as a city for the relocation of the fly field.
At this point in time, the Fairview Park Master Plan draft is in review and has not been finally adopted. I know we are scheduling a meeting with HSS and OCME in regards to relocating the fly field and evaluating that area specifically, but we do not have any cost estimates in regards to what that exact cost is going to be. So at this point in time, it's purely speculation. Another thing to keep in mind too is that any type of fee that would be applied to HSS, how does that correlate to OCME? Right now, we do have a long-term agreement with OCME, and we're looking to mimic that type of agreement with HSS as well. But that's all depending on when the master plan is going to be adopted by council, which we're hopeful will be sometime in July or August.
Yeah, I just heard you say incidental damages, and I think we have to understand that there are raptor birds that are being protected by the state of California, and that we know that are in the area. So just to kind of put this as an example, I know of a neighboring county that just tree related, they were pruning a tree, and it just so happened to be a eucalyptus, and it had 4 different types of species of birds. At the end of that solution, they had to pay about $400,000 in fee. And so that kind of comes to show you, like, it's I know that the HSS is going to pay those fees, but why are we getting to that point? I think we really need to assess that. Because there are a lot of birders. Birders are the people that call for incidents like that. And I think the city of Costa Mesa has also requested like practices for, there's this organization that I'm a part of, it's called Tree Care for Birds. And so that organization is all about educating arborists on inspection of bird habitat. And a lot of times they're not nesting in the trees. Sometimes they're, in the ground. So I think it's important to, give that information to them, and maybe get a biologist that can volunteer. And I'm happy to connect you with some of them in Orange County to see if they can volunteer to go and inspect the area first before we make any movements for the relocation.
If I just may talk to that real quick, we did have an independent evaluation done on the east side location where the proposed fly field would be located at. And it was done about a year ago, actually, yeah, right around a year ago, last May, which identified that there was far less of a chance of any type of encounter with birds and different things like that, simply because that environment isn't conducive to having a large number of birds or raptors or different things like that, particularly in that area. That doesn't mean it can't happen, but the likelihood is far less than if we were to keep the fly field on the west side, or on the west side, area of the park.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think it's important to know that we're moving in the right direction. After listening to that, I'm very confident that we're doing the right thing. Changing the subject, I wanted to echo my fellow commissioners. The public engagement is always important, really important to us. And also more data, it helps us make better decisions. And And then the cost recovery, I think it is important to see how we can outsource or increase fees, and maybe not increase for our residents, increase it from outside residents, and then maybe apply it to cover for any increases in the future. I did want to ask, and maybe this question may not make sense, so let me try to see if I can put this together right. In the past, when was the last time that a 20% average increase has been made? Was that 2017 or 2019?
We don't have a record of whether that has happened, happened in 2017 or 2019. I can tell you that the commission's feedback feels totally rational to us, and when we go to other agencies that have been several years between fee updates, and they say, I'm not sure where to go, a lot of times we use that exact rationality that you're proposing as well. What has been the change in state minimum wage since the last time your fees have been updated, because you rely a ton on seasonal labor? And what has been the change in regional cost inflation since the last time fees were updated? So I do think there's precedent. I just don't know if it's happened in Costa Mesa before.
Okay. Yeah, and I, looking over the numbers, I do agree with the average that you presented to us. I don't see it, I see it as a non-provocative. But yeah, if there's any way that we can increase in non-residents, I think that would be a good step forward to make it a little bit more sustainable, and increase the amount of revenue that we're able to invest in different things. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Gosh, I love provocative, but anyways, I'm not going to do that here and now. Vice Chair Wright and I have a few other words or things to say, I think, but I know that you've had your light on. You'd have had a comment or a question.
I just want to address, Commissioner, to remind you how rational I do think you are in terms of potentially targeting 24%. What I wanted to convey, and I feel like I did a bad job of it, is I don't think you get to 24% without touching youth, sports, and seniors. That's the key. So if you say those are non-touchables, then I think 24% is a non-touchable, because that's where your volume is. So you're saying I'm open to increasing facility rental rates, but even if you double, even if you changed all your facility rental rates by 100%, you're gonna move your cost recovery to 18%, because the volume is in sports programming, youth programming, and senior programming. So that's all I'm trying to convey.
Thank you. And I'm fine if whatever you said or called me crazy, whatever. Trust me, I've been in politics a long time. It takes a lot. I've been called a lot worse recently in my other role. What I'm asking for is understanding all the youth. We're talking about, there's certain youth sports that are innate and local. Our local baseball team, our local soccer teams, the AYSO. But there's also youth sports. That's the world I came out of, to being president of NHBA for years and understanding how this all works and timing of where everything is. There's a lot of youth sports that are not, they're for profit. And I'm looking at ways in which we protect the fees of our, what I call recreation youth sports. That's where so many of our children really gain outdoor space, community with their neighbors, their classmates, and I think everybody says that. The other thing about seniors, I think there's one area, and it's not a great increase, but it's really looking at the cost, which you've already talked about, of these activities. And because gas is now outrageous, all this thing. So I'm just saying, I don't think that's a third rail for me. It's not a huge jump, but it's sort of like, gosh, we're paying now $7 a gallon to fill up the van that's going to go over to Lagoon, to La Habra to see a wonderful play. I think some of those costs need to be examined based on the actual costs, but not limiting the seniors. But that might limit the activities being offered because of the pricing. Does that make sense? That
Totally.
Yeah, okay. So there's a lot of layers to youth sports, The ones I'm talking about, I think we all are the local recreation that have really a long history, and our children really, really learn so much from them.
Thank you so much for clarifying that.
Okay, thanks.
Vice Chair Wright.
Hey, so I think to wrap up my thoughts from after hearing from everyone is I guess I just wanted to sort of list out my why and like the anchor for me of why this would be worth it in the smallest impact possible. I was hoping, even if we're garnering an additional $250K a year, we have 12 parks that have C-rated, our projects, neighborhood parks that are C-rated that we're gonna have to tackle in the next 5 years, you know? So at $250K, that's one of our parks right there. And we just went through the CIP process where we had to basically pick one park for this year, you know? Ambitiously, what I love that Commissioner Dorn Parker said, it's $1 million. It's $1 million a year. It's West Side Development Fund. Like, I understand it's going to require impact and sacrifice in some places, but it will go to a good use. You know, it will go to a good place. It will go to growth and development where it's needed. So that's my why. And then based off of our conversation, what I'm hearing from everyone is I think like a spectrum, maybe of like 3 options would be really helpful. In addition to that data we requested, so maybe some comparative data, usage data, you know, hearing you be so compelled about the volume of youth and seniors, that makes me think maybe I would consider a very small increase that could have a big impact. I think especially with non-resident programs. So noticing that youth programs, non-residents, there's hardly a difference between the two. I don't like that. So I'm comfortable with changing that. So yeah, I think a spectrum of changes, whether it's more limited in just the programming, CPI index or more, maybe then, and we don't touch youth or seniors at all. Maybe there's one, it's across the board, non-residents is double minimum. Seems like we have a lot of interest for that. And then maybe one where we're more aggressive also with businesses, whether it be in the like commercial rentals or in youth sports. Or maybe honestly, the third could be like that blend, right? So the CPI or the CPI plus aggressive multiple due to non-residency, and then a very small sort of like just getting the fat layer, you know, getting an additional 5 to 10 or whatever. I'm curious, are you envisioning like a multi-year rollout proposal to council, or just when you entered this, you were just thinking about this next year?
Well, you guys have totally blown my mind this evening. So,
Welcome to PAX.
Are we the best Parks Commission you've ever presented to?
So the envision was that the city council would be asked to adopt an updated comprehensive fee schedule that would include these 68 recreation-specific fees. And so they would adopt this 50-page packet, and you're part of it. And then at that adopting resolution would authorize annual inflationary adjustments moving forward until the time of the next study. But it wouldn't say, I'm going to try and change these fees by 100%, and I know you can't do it overnight, so do 20% for the next 5 years. It did not as of this moment, it hasn't contemplated that. We're not opposed to the idea of phase-in plans if appropriate, but I think I like the idea of coming back and saying, here's some scenarios, and then based on those scenarios, if you like one of them, you say, I like it, and I really want it, I just feel like I can't get there tomorrow, but I want to get there. Or you might say, I like it, and I feel like I could get there. There's nothing stopping us from getting there tomorrow. So I think the idea of a multi-year rollout will depend on what scenario you choose.
So I would, so what I'm understanding is you were planning to suggest a change for the immediate next fiscal year and add on a CPI automated adjustment.
Yeah.
What was it going to be, 5%? Was
It's-
there going to be a cap?
No, there's no cap, it's just tied to the region. So whatever your Anaheim, Long Beach, Orange region is, which is historically 3%.
Okay. I would probably suggest, I don't want to disrupt your guys' existing model, so I think whatever we would feel comfortable to propose to go into effect into the next year is probably what I would suggest. But a long-term goal to know how are we going to track even with that 3%, how would that start to close in on us? How would we close that gap? I think would be nice to see, like future projections. But no, I don't want to change your guys' entire plan.
Well, I think you do have an option if it's something you wish to pursue, because you say, I value this programming, but I also recognize the challenges we face, the 12 parks we have that are sea level. You can, without a lot of pain and suffering, without a lot of complication, you can ask the council by resolution to adopt fee. So like building and planning fees, they're frequently targeting full cost recovery, and that's why you limit the annual adjustment to CPI, because you say, if I go higher than that, I'm going to now exceed my cost recovery. But you are not in that world. So you could say, council, I would like you to adopt fees as of this point in time, and I would like you to consider 10% annual adjustments for the next 5 years for these particular groups of fees, and it doesn't apply to the building and planning fees that are already. So it would just be called out in the resolution, and it would be easy to implement.
Cool, okay. So I think where I'm at is there's a lot of consensus, but still a lot of questions, a little bit more information. We'd like to see a couple of options. So I'm wondering about process here. Is there time for you guys to report back? Could we squeeze in a special meeting if we need to? Like, what is the timing looking like here?
And actually, before we go there, I have a few.
Go ahead.
I have a few comments, and I have a resolution to make too around that. One thing is when I was struggling with the logic of this, and so you're hearing a lot of that now. But if you turn to page 49, for example, and you look at proposed changes, one thing that strikes me as interesting is that, so the rates are different if you were to compare somebody who's a private non-resident to a commercial or an organization. I understand that, the fees are different, but the increase is the same. And I do have to wonder, can we, when we revisit this, can we think about what kind of logic in terms of those changes? Because I would say they're not the same. And so that's just one example, and that could be applied to variety of categories. And so I appreciate all of the comments, everything that people have contributed tonight. It's been, I think, really interesting to think about. For me, I feel like there is a need for us, in order to make a decision, for me certainly, having some usage data, I think is really important. I think having comparative analysis, and so that we understand where we fit into other cities. I think Commissioner Dorn Parker, you did an exceptional job for me just articulating what your personal experience is like in other cities around non-resident fees. Like, that's really helpful. So that would be important data for me to have. I am very concerned about senior impact, and we did just have to make some really hard recommendations around that senior transportation program. It's not that it's untouchable. Personally, I would like to not touch it, but that does not apply to everyone. I am just very concerned about seniors, and so that's something to keep in mind. I think also hearing some of the public comments tonight would be important, so that there is some level of public engagement, albeit small, that's built into this. And so I am wondering, can we revisit this at our next PAX meeting with this data so that we can make an informed decision to City Council? And that's the resolution that I would make, that we do not approve this as is, and that we ask for these data points to be provided in addition to some of the recommendations around how to think about fee structure, how to think about percentages, and that we revisit that at our next PAX meeting. That's the resolution that I make. Is there a second?
Madam Chair, if I just may say just real quick that the commission, it's within your authority to bring the fees back at any time, and you can reevaluate them at any time. And that is part of the ordinance for the commission as is established by City Council. So again, this can be brought back at any time, and we can completely do a full review of the fees if you want, and do a further study and analysis. So that could be an option.
I have a question about the timing. When are you anticipating bringing the proposal for approval to the city council? Because I think we need to back it in for us to gain the data, the backup information, so that we.
I mean, I can't support this as is, so I will go on record. I will not be voting to approve
Right, and
this.
I can't either. It's not that it's not logical or what it's always been, but given how much information that you just knew from the top of your head and the staff, I can't recommend this go as is to the council. With a good record. So that's what I'm trying to figure out, to back it in to when the council needs it, so to make sure we'll meet the timing, and also we'll get the data and information in time to have an updated proposal that we then forward to council.
I'd like, if you could answer in terms of timing before, because there's a motion on I made a motion.
Yes, it would be we're looking at June, July, but most likely July.
So there would be time for us to review, there would be time for us to review this next month?
Depending on when the next commission meeting is, as, we just have only because we have to publish this, so it kind of depends when that next meeting is, just to make sure we have proper timing.
June 11th.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, so this was a finance project to publish their master fee schedule. As Director Gruner says, at any time we can bring back our parks and recreation fees for something outside of their timeline, even if it was all of them or just one particular one in every meeting. If that was the council's wish, we can always do that. Per municipal code, that's in your authority to bring back any particular fee at any time. So if this goes to council and they adopt a master fee schedule with budget, and then the next meeting, next month, you guys wanted to reevaluate one of the fees, we can absolutely still do that. So I just wanted to, in terms of timeline, we can also always do that.
So I make a motion. It sounds like we have the time so that we could see this next month. So I make my motion stands. Should I repeat it?
Can I also chime in?
I think I'm getting a second.
Yes, I just want to note that the data part would fall on our department to work with a consultant, so that would take some time. I know that we would do our best to get the data to work with them, but that would be, we're a little short-staffed right now. So.
We're not in a position to approve this with the data that we have, so we can deny it or vote to deny it, or I'm making a motion that we see it next month with a second.
Wait, can I be clear on your motion?
The motion
is to set aside and bring it up at the next meeting?
My motion is that we do not, so I'll restate. My motion is that we do not approve as is because we need some data, and that we agendize it for next month in the hopes that we can then provide City Council the recommendations that they need because they're trying to make budget recommendations, and from there, analyze the data.
So I know you need a second for me to ask questions.
I have a second. Vice Chair Wright seconded it.
So my question, so that parts can move forward, is there the residential fees, the part we're okay with? That's what I want to know, because I can see part of it, if part of it is we agree with how they're looking at the fees, with the residential fees and the senior fees, then I would need to deny your approval and go for another approval to go ahead and move forward on the fees we agree with, so that they can have it and package it, and then come back on and just analyze the data on the fees that we want to look at.
But we don't even understand what comparative analysis of other cities. We don't understand what the usage data, and all of us went down the row saying, we don't understand what the usage is. We don't understand what comparative analysis is. So I don't feel I'm not in a position to approve this. I don't feel like I have enough of the data to do it.
Can I finish with me? I know as a maker of the motion, can I answer what I was going to do? Okay.
Okay.
Because we're pretty consistent that we want to approve a CPI, and everyone was reading this to understand that the fees for residents, given what everybody has, is okay. I'm just trying to figure out how to get it moving to the places it needs to move so we can focus on the places we want to focus. So I understand we want user fees and data and things such as that, but this is what our residents have been paying. Even Commissioner Kamala said it's great, but 30% CPI is pretty consistent. We want residents to be reasonable. Even if we find out Irvine charges $50 more for something that now costs $20, I'm not sure that's going to change much, but I understand if you want all the data to be able to do anything, that's fine. That's the motion before, but I'm not going to support that. I would prefer to move forward with resident fees so our residents know what it is, knowing that I'm going to add in the CPI that Vice Chair Wright recommended and move on that and then analyze the other parts.
Is this an alternative motion?
I'm not making a substitute motion.
A substitute motion?
I'm just saying,
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
arguing against yours by what I think that I can vote for instead. Okay.
So there's a motion and a second.
I understood your motion as just let's move this to the next step based off of our feedback, not specifying what specific outcome we need them to come back with, right? I feel like we've thrown out businesses, commercial use by category. We've thrown it out too, like facility rentals versus recreational programming. And then we've also thrown out a mix of like an aggressive multiple for being a non-resident versus a CPI index. I'm kind of like, I want to have a couple options brought back. I want to see the revenue impact because I don't know the usage. And then I can weigh like, is it worth it to me or not?
So that's why I was
Is that
clarifying to vote to move it to the next meeting, but that's not what I heard what the motion was.
That was the motion, is that they come back next meeting with all of the data that we're asking for.
Okay, I thought you were denying the proposal, voting it down, and not making it.
I'm not approving it, so let me restate.
Okay.
I cannot approve it at this meeting. So next meeting, this agenda will be agendized at next meeting with usage data, with some comparative analysis, and with a variety. Vice Chair Wright had asked for a variety of options, right?
Okay.
And so that allows us
That's what I was
to
trying to
do
clarify.
a more comprehensive analysis. It's not a wholesale rejection, but it's not approved at this meeting. So it's agendizing it for next
Okay, so
meeting.
it's
That's the
next.
motion as I meant it.
Okay, thank you.
As
That's what I was
meant
clarifying.
it.
No, it's nothing personal. But I want to see, is that realistic that we get all that information?
Or
at the
some of
next
it.
meeting? And that's what I'm seeing, no.
It's not, I can tell you on our side, it might sound very easy what you're asking for, but with city timelines and noticing and all those kind of things, I feel uncomfortable committing to the second week of June. Could you make your motion to say the soonest, I don't know how you phrase it, but basically as fast as possible, and we will be working, but I feel very comfortable saying we will have it to you by July. I just don't want to mislead you and say I will, because I feel like you've essentially said, I don't like what I received tonight and I want better information. So we want to give you better information, and I don't want you to make the same statement in June because we rushed.
I'd like to put out there that we can even schedule a special meeting, right? In between second week of June and whatever second week of July is the council happening. And I just want to emphasize that I know we could do this anytime, but right now the wind is at our back. Council's already invested. It's really hard to get their attention and to get them to care about something and to veer them off of whatever other thing they're set on. So I want to view this as a good thing, and hopefully it will be worth it because it will generate more revenue for us. Like, let's just hunker down. Let's try to get the best you guys can get done. If you come back and it's not done in full, it's okay. It's still going to be better than what we got today.
I'm hearing those words.
I think more than what we have. This is bare bones, and it only recommends 5 changes.
Okay, then I will honor that statement, but then you guys honor that statement too.
All right, let us take the vote.
You're so funny.
Commissioner Kamala, you look like you have something
I guess
to add.
my question is if we do approve this now, we have the ability to go back in and just look at one particular fee and just say, even at the next meeting, non-resident swim fee, and just look at that like piecemeal it.
Per municipal code, your authority as the Parks and Community Services Commission, you have the ability to set fees without it going to council. So this is a document that goes to council with their budget preparation and master fee schedule. So that's why they are doing this project. And so it just so happens to coincide with some fees that we were particular about looking at. Any other fees we can bring back, and you have the authority to vote and set them without them going to council.
This is our opportunity for our fees to be alongside budget, which is alongside CIP recommendations. And I just want to remind y'all that we made some CIP recommendations. And so I agree with the wind at our back. I think this is an opportunity for us. Commissioner Ledger.
So I did want to say, by the way, we were this hard on the park rangers report too. So, so don't feel bad. And then, yeah, I would I agree that like at the next meeting, getting what we can, I like that. And then can we also like add on to the agenda that meeting for the residence fees? Like I would love that. Next meeting that, and then I can vote on this.
What's the language to use? So it's not we're voting to move this. Educate me. Like what's the language to push this to the next meeting? Is that formal enough?
That's it.
Okay. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. I think we're clear about pushing this to the next meeting with some data to the best of your ability. You know what you're gonna get now. I mean, had you not watched a PAX before? Like, I'm teasing you. We really appreciate this. We need to take a vote though, and then I can properly think.
Everyone may vote on your dais. Motion carries 6-0 to move the item to the next meeting.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your investment in this. I really appreciate it, listening to all of our concerns and our questions and comments. So thank you. Do we need a 5-minute break? All right. Why don't we take we'll reconvene at 8:10. Welcome back. We come back to the meeting at 8:09 p.m. We're back a minute early. And with that, we move to special item number 2, the donation of a memorial bench and plaque at Tewinkle Park. Mr. Ryan.
Good evening, Chair Brown, Commissioners. The next item before you is a request to receive a donation of a memorial bench and plaque to be installed at Tewinkle Park. City received a request from Sarah Fahey, a past Parks Commissioner, requesting to donate a bench and plaque in memory of Stephen Lee Baker, who passed away in July of 2025. The bench and plaque would be installed at Tewinkle Park. You have that letter included as the request included as attachment 1 in your packet. Follow along in that letter. Mr. Baker was a longtime resident of Costa Mesa. He loved the parks and the community and the nature they brought in the neighborhoods. He enjoyed surfing, fishing, camping, and especially music. His love of music led him to a career traveling the world and acquiring a collection of rare American vintage stringed instruments, particularly banjos, one of my favorite instruments. He had a few exhibits, one in Beverly Hills and Tokyo as well, so that's pretty amazing. He had a deep connection to arts, culture, and the outdoors. He actually organized the first of its kind bluegrass and traditional music expo in 1986, held at the Orange County Fairgrounds, where they had over 200 vendors. And they participated with families gathered to enjoy folk music. His family has great memories of this event. It's an event that definitely highlighted one of his passions. Mr. Baker could also often be found in a park bench playing a banjo or a harmonica. The family shared that it's so many fond memories of time spent together at Tewinkle Park and felt that a bench close to the lakes would be an ideal spot. The bench would serve as a spot to gather and share all those memories with family and friends that still reside in Costa Mesa. After you can see the kind of general location near what we call the upper fill pond. That's near the upper walkway above all the lake systems. And then here's a kind of a closer view. After reviewing a few options, the family and staff agreed that the most suitable location for the bench would be near the upper walkway that overlooks the lakes. There's representative photos there on the left and the right, with that stake being where the bench would be placed with the plaque in the ground. Here's a bench that matches the existing furniture, site furnishings and the existing memorial benches that are around the lake. And then there's a sample of a plaque, what the plaque would look like. It would be installed in the ground. I just want to pause for a moment here and acknowledge that in the past, Commission had asked staff to review the possibility of wooden benches. So we did look into the possibility of wooden benches. We discovered that there is just a vast amount of types and ranges and costs. And so it's really difficult to have a true apples-to-apples comparison without some further direction or specific type of bench. I think there was kind of a natural wood bench that was proposed. So that part was really difficult. We did look into it. First, I'll cover why we recommend a standard bench. So it's indicated in council policy. It's attachment to states specified in the approved streetscape and median development standards. Of course, some furnishings outside of that standard have been reviewed and approved by council and commission through designing and purchasing processes. But those benefits, they ensure a proven quality bench, the last and the elements. It's a streamlined process where you have existing site furnishings. It eliminates the possibility of requests for kind of outlandish benches like, to the 49ers or something like that. So it just limits, sets some guide rails for what can be requested and what can't be. Cost is a factor. In this case, again, I mentioned the vast variety of wooden benches. There were some that were relatively same cost as our expanded metal benches. Think back to maybe the 80s or 90s of those kind of wooden splintery lumber benches. And then there were some that are more along the lines of the cost of the recycled plastic benches, which is slightly higher. And then, of course, all the way up into thousands and thousands of dollars for the customized natural wood benches. And then, of course, for the standardized benches, we have replacement parts that are readily available that we actually keep on hand. If something breaks, we have replacement backs and seats and hardware that we can replace quickly, where some of these specialized parts can take months to get, depending on the bench. Again, we did look at wood just as a broad category. So basic research and speaking with suppliers. Cost, as I mentioned, could be a factor. Maintenance requirements would be an issue. They are required to be resealed annually. They're usually protected with varnish. There's some issues with durability and weather, especially being kind of a coastal community. We do have quite a bit of morning moisture in the air. That would be an issue. Generally, they're not resistant to vandalism, etching, carving. Unfortunately, something we see that's common in a lot of surfaces in our parks. It'd be difficult or impossible to remove graffiti without having to paint over them. Removing the graffiti by traditional means could damage the wood. It would certainly damage the sealant on it. Painting over them, I think, would defeat the whole purpose. And based on those concerns, it's something that staff would not recommend at this time. Obviously, it's something that could be reviewed in the future if Commission had a specific recommendation or had some specific ideas. We'd be more than happy to do specific research on a true comparison of like to like and bring something back in the future. So we're certainly open to new ideas. I don't want to give that idea that we're not, but just based on the information we had, that's kind of where we're at. Back to the presentation at hand. Staff did review the proposed location, and we determined that it's suitable for the bench and plaque. Again, as I state in previous donations, it'll have minimal impact to the city. The donor will incur the cost of the donated items, the bench and the plaque. The city staff on hand would perform the installation services. The request does meet the requirements as set forth by City Council policy. Therefore, it's recommended the Commission approve the request from Sarah Fahey for the donation of the bench and plaque in memory of Stephen Lee Baker at Tewinkle Park. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan, and thank you for that response to the interest in wood benches. Really appreciate the time and attention to that. I'm going to actually open it up for public comment. Seeing no one in the chambers, is there anyone online?
No one at this time.
Okay. Commissioner comments, questions? Commissioner Garcia Arcos.
Thank you for that information. I really appreciate you bringing that conversation back. I think it's really important that, that makes us feel heard. I really like that. Not recommended at this time. So, following through, I will contact John Mahoney, who is the manager for the Street Tree Revival. They actually manufacture these benches throughout, I think they have like 300 counties that they work with. And so I'm pretty sure that some city that is similar to Costa Mesa, maybe we can get specific bench comparisons. That would be really sweet. So thanks for that information. I did want to ask, is there a possibility, because I know that there's no trees for this one because there's existing trees around. Is there a way to put in like a shrub, like some kind of pollinator? I think it's really nice when you sit down and you see like bees or butterflies or hummingbirds, something of that, just to visual, because it looks pretty open and plain. I know there's a lot of shade, but maybe a little bit further out.
So thank you for that question. Yeah, it's a rather bare area. Part of the reason for that is that area is covered with pine trees. So pine needle drop has its own natural herbicide in it. So anything that pine needles fall in, they tend to, they don't play well with other things planted underneath them. So it's a challenge to have any other plant material beneath those pine trees. So that would definitely be something that would be an issue. We can look at planting additional trees down that slope. I know there's plans once the Tewinkle Lakes project is completed to add trees around the lakes. So that's definitely something we could look at maybe a little further down the slope out from underneath the canopy of those pine trees. And that wouldn't necessarily be right in that bench area, but could be in the line of sight.
Okay, and would that be a cost that they would be covering, or would you recommend it as part of the 250 trees that you guys are trying to plant?
That would not be something we would put on the request order, as they're just looking for a bench, but it's definitely something that the city could look into in their tree planting in the future.
Yeah, and if you do move forward with it, I would recommend contacting the family and saying, hey, this idea came from the bench that you guys donated, just so they can have that connection with that tree.
We could definitely do that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Other Commissioner Ledger.
I've either asked this before and forgotten the answer, or I've thought about asking it and didn't get a chance to, so forgive me if I've asked this before. How long do these benches stay there?
Typically indefinitely. I have not seen one that's gone away or been removed. We've replaced benches, we replaced parts to benches. Ones that are donated, we kind of take on the responsibility of making sure they stay in place. So I haven't seen one that's completely gone away.
So is there any chance of us ever running out of space for bench donations?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I mean, there is that chance. We do look at these as a case-by-case basis. City staff goes out and reviews the area. We do make recommendations as to appropriateness of locations. That would include parks. We don't have a specific number. We can tell you, hey, we'll take no more than 20 benches at this park. But it is a consideration in the evaluation process when we first get the request.
Okay, so maybe in the future, this commission will be looking at donating something other than benches, but thank you.
I'm sorry, I just want to add, we do have an opportunity to replace existing benches. So maybe ones that aren't necessarily donated or have a plaque associated with them. We do offer that opportunity for benches that are, have been worn or utilized quite a bit and need to be replaced. We can offer that as an alternative if the requestor is open to it. So we have done that in the past.
Anything? Vice Chair, did you want to weigh in at all?
I would just love to know when we're scheduled to complete the Lakes project. Wait, did they just ask that? And I totally...
No, but it's not on the, it's not, I mean, how does it pertain to the agenda item of the plaque and bench donation?
We have to stay...
Because of it being a special meeting, the rules
Well,
are...
that's better than somebody else just asked it and I missed it. So, oh, darn. I'll ask you after the meeting.
It's in a few weeks. One idea, though, that this raised for me, so Mr. Baker sounds like he was a really interesting man, part of a history of music in Costa Mesa, City of the Arts. I just have to say, an idea for social media is like the who's who of Costa Mesa. This is a person that it would be really interesting to learn about. And then there's a bench where you could go and visit the bench. So just putting this out there as an idea for Matt, the social media guy. I mean, there's some really interesting people who have lived in Costa Mesa. What can we do to bring them to life? So anyways, my 2 cents. Is there a motion? Someone want to make a motion?
Make the motion that we accept the donation.
Thank you. In a second.
Yeah, there we go. It's not working.
And then the second, if you can, there we go. You may vote on your dais. Motion carries 6-0 to approve the donation of the memorial bench and plaque.
Wonderful. I think Mr. Baker was a really interesting man. I'm really interested in that bluegrass history in Costa Mesa. I think that's rad.
I would love to have your idea explored, almost have images, music, and then look at the bench.
Just there's some really interesting people, and we're discovering some of them through the benches and some of them through other means. So, 90 seconds. Okay. Are we okay to move to special item number 3? Okay. Special item number 3: donation of a memorial tree, bench, and plaque at Estancia Park. Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
Thank you. So I apologize for that. We're not quite full screen, but hopefully everything comes out. The next item before you is a request to receive a donation of a memorial bench, plaque, and tree to be installed at Estancia Park. The city received a request from Sue Nichols requesting permission from this commission to donate a tree, bench, and plaque in memory of her mother, Mary Alice Sherman, who passed away in October of 2025. And the tree, bench, and plaque would be installed at Estancia Park. The Shermans lived in their home in Costa Mesa for 61 years, and Mary's husband, Bob, still resides there. Sherman had 5 children, all of whom attended school in Costa Mesa, attended all the way elementary school, all the way to Orange Coast College. Mary was an educator, having taught preschool at Mesa Verde Preschool for many years, and then continued her career in early childhood development for almost an additional 20 years. According to the family, Mary had a passion for gardening and spent countless hours tending to her garden filled with hummingbirds and butterflies. Bob and Mary were avid animal lovers and cherished their dogs and enjoyed taking them for walks at the local parks. The family chose Estancia Park as the ideal location for the bench and tree, and after reviewing a few options, family and staff agreed the most suitable location in the park for the bench would be east of the adobe and just south of the restroom building. You can see with the white arrow The adobes at the very left of the screen, and that other roofed area is the restroom area. There's a nice walkway that meanders in that circular area around where the tree would be proposed. This is a ground view of that. Again, the location of the bench with some shade from a nearby tree. And the donated tree will be planted across from the bench. This small open area. It's surrounded by that circular walkway. Again, back to the same standard bench, the expanded metal bench, and the sample of the memorial plaque that would be installed in the ground. The family chose a jacaranda tree in honor of their mother's favorite color, purple. The family felt that this space with a bench and tree would offer a place of reflection and serve as a lasting expression of Mary's love of nature and the community. Staff reviewed the proposed location and determined that it is suitable for the bench, tree, and plaque. The installation, again, will have minimal fiscal impact on the city. The donor will cover the cost of the bench, the plaque, and the tree in this case. The request does meet all the requirements set forth by council policy. Therefore, it's recommended that the commission approve the request from Sue Nichols for the donation of the bench and tree in memory of Mary Alice Sherman. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. I'm going to open it up for public comment. Seeing no members of the public in the chambers, is there anyone online?
No members currently at this time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner comments, questions, suggestions? Commissioner Garcia Arcos.
Yeah, I wanted to add, is it possible to look at the jacaranda before it's bought and look that the structure is what we're looking for? Just because I know that in some donated trees, the structure may not be what sometimes we accept trees. And I don't want to generalize it. I've just seen that rarely. But is it possible to have a certified arborist check the tree before we get it on the site? Or do we have trees in your facility?
So I just want to distinguish between two separate types of donations. Some we have very much control over, and some we don't. We just accept what we're giving, and those are kind of large volume donations for Arbor Day planting, things that are just free from our local contractors, vendors, donors, things like that, where out of the goodness of their heart want to do something for the environment, they give the city a quantity of trees. And so we kind of accept generally what they give us and work with that. In this case, this is a specific donation that the donor is paying for. So there's an expectation that it'd be a quality tree. So we do have the opportunity, number one, to receive photos of the tree. We don't often, I shouldn't say we don't often, but we don't always go out to the nursery, because sometimes those nurseries are a distance from the city, and so it's a little time prohibitive. So we look at pictures, and then we always have the right to reject the delivery. We inspect the delivery when we get it, and we have the opportunity there to reject any tree that is not to the city arborist's satisfaction.
Okay, that's perfect. And I hope that we can work to be able to decline trees that just don't have a future. I think that's something long-term that might be more of a liability than an asset. But thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ledger.
So I'm just going to do my best to be tactful with this question. First of all, I absolutely love that tree and that it's going to be across from the bench and plaque. But when Bob ultimately joins Mary again and Sue wants to get a plaque for him, can it be added in front of the same bench, or will she have to get a whole other bench and plaque to get one for Bob and Mary, if that makes sense?
It does, and I want to check the verbiage. Normally it's included in our report, but I believe the requested verbiage included Bob ahead of time.
Okay. So I was not the only one thinking that.
In any case, if the donor were to come back or and make that request, the city could accommodate that. Of course, we'd most likely charge them because they have to be completely replaced. We can add a name. So we'd remove that plaque and at their request, and if they cover the cost, we'd reinstall it at nothing extra other than the cost of the plaque.
Thank you.
Great. Really great questions. Other commissioner comments, questions? Okay. Does someone want to make a motion?
I'll go ahead and make the motion.
Commissioners may vote on your dais. Motion carries 6-0 to approve the donation of the tree bench and plaque.
Very exciting. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Okay, moving along to special item number 4, the Parks and Community Services Commission Annual Report. Director Gruner, do you want to start? And then I can provide a few words of intro as well.
Yeah, sure. I would be happy to, Madam Chair. So this is a continuation item from the last meeting that we had on April 23rd, where the commission discussed various topics that should be included for the PAC's annual presentation to the council. I know that the chair and vice chair worked on a presentation, a sample that we definitely want to review and discuss tonight. And with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
So when we were putting together this document, we did not go ahead and make it a fancy PowerPoint yet. We really wanted to start with just the raw, this is the raw data, so that you could provide any and all input now, and then we will take that and add it to this, and then from there make it a really beautiful PowerPoint. So I just wanted to explain our process. I did attend the city council meeting where the arts did their special presentation, and so I was able to use that as I was able to watch that as a model, and we'll keep that in mind when we're putting together ours. But just an explanation, we really focused on outlining what our plan is for the coming year. We utilized the conversation that we had. We took copious notes. I hope we caught everything and in a way that makes sense, but this is the opportunity for you to weigh in and give us any and all feedback. And with that, maybe what I'm going to do just to get, I'm going to open it up for public comment first, and then we'll go down the line. Seeing no one in the chambers who would like to make public comment, is there anyone online?
No current members at this time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, how does it look? Questions, comments, concerns? Commissioner Kamala.
No, I think just reading through it, a lot of the sound bites that you guys captured, just a real great job. Honestly, like some of the things I heard, I'm like, I remember that meeting. So just thank you for it. It feels pretty thorough, but at the same time, very focused on the things that are important to us. So thank you.
And actually, that's a good prompt. We tried to keep it short and sweet, because that was the other thing. Watching that meeting, you can tell when they've, the city council has reached the point of like, that's enough info, right? So we're trying to get a little bit of a balance where we're giving them enough, but not too much. So thank you for that.
The only update I might have is under events, concerts in the park. I know one of the future to really look at is continue a tradition of participating, but also encouraging a change of location. I think just needs to be put in there so it sets in their mind that it needs to change out of Fairview Park. Otherwise, it's excellent. Thank you.
Are other folks in agreement with that? Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Dorn Parker? Commissioner Lund? No. You can if you have feedback, you should provide it here. And if not here, Ms. Fatua, help me out here. If he has feedback that he doesn't have ready for the moment, what's the process?
I guess the follow-up question is, will they get to see a proof of the PowerPoint prior?
That is a very good question. And no, this is actually, let me ask you a question. When is our presentation to City Council?
We're looking at probably July, to put it in line with, July is Parks Make Lives Better month. And we do want to recognize and highlight that. So that's the preliminary time frame would be in July.
So here's what I'll say, just as I did to those folks where I asked them for more information. If you have additional feedback and you send it to Ms. Fatua within the next week, then I can build it into this document and bring the document back so that it's reviewed by everyone. But if she doesn't hear from you in a week, it's done. Cool. Okay. Is this a receive and file, or do I need a motion?
Motion to move to the next meeting.
That motion to bring it back for final review at the next meeting. Or
if there are changes.
If there are any changes. Do you need approval for this, or is it more receive and file?
We need approval, but just for context, for the Arts Commission, they did approve a PowerPoint.
Oh, really? That's good to know.
Yeah, so basically, there's a motion to approve for the next meeting for like a final review, so.
Vice Chair Wright, do you have something to contribute to the conversation?
I forgot I should talk on the mic. I just said, I don't think it has to be a presentation that you guys approve in final form. You can trust us that a final written document will be extremely true to the nature of the presentation. So if you guys are cool with that.
I want to update my motion. I would like to approve what's before us, but I also want to give the opportunity, if someone makes a recommendation, you've given them a week, that we come back for the final. I don't believe I need to, but I don't know. I'm going to make the motion that it can be in the same format to just do the final approval, and I leave it in the hands of our chair and vice chair and the staff to put together whatever artful PowerPoint, which will grab the city council so they don't fall asleep or get glassy-eyed.
I'll second that.
Go ahead. Motion. Commissioners may vote on your dais. Motion carries 6-0 to move this item to the next meeting.
Okay. Moving on to the final special item of the night, new community garden location study. Director Gruner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is another continuation item from the April 23rd meeting, where we presented a general overview of the garden centers, their operation, and some of the improvements that we've made, in addition to forming some type of evaluation team to evaluate other alternative sites for a new garden center here within Costa Mesa. And during that discussion item, several names or commissioners were interested in being part of that team, that evaluation team, but we can only have up to 3 people. And I believe we had 5 people, commissioners, interested in partaking in that. So we just want to finalize who those 3 will be, and then we can go ahead and move forward with the evaluation team and start doing some research and analysis.
I'm okay to withdraw my name.
So what I was going to do is go down and check in with everybody again. I do have one quick question, though, before I do that. Talk to us about how is an evaluation team different than a subcommittee? I understand the formal process is different in terms of approval from the city manager, but I'm interested in the differences in terms of how the work gets done, and I'm just not familiar with, we've never encountered an evaluation team.
Well, I think it's just a terminology, whether it's a subcommittee or an evaluation team. I just don't want to call it an ad hoc committee. Once we do that, then it's formalized. We have to get the legal involved, and we have to get their approval in order to form that ad hoc committee. But in this case, I think what we're trying to do for this purpose is just to evaluate different locations within Costa Mesa. It should be a pretty straightforward process.
So when our discussion of, this is my concern, is that our discussion of community gardens was actually like, I know Commissioner Dorn Parker raised the issue of fees, and so we wanted this committee to look at that. I know I expressed interest that this this team, this sub-team is going to look at, like, should do some comparative analysis, right? So that, and then I think that there were other ideas. I know Commissioner Kamala had ideas. So the scope is much bigger than just looking at locations, but locations is an important part. And so that was actually, thank you for raising that. That was actually one of the things that I wanted to get clarified here, which is by calling it an evaluation team, does that curtail any activities?
No, it wouldn't. We can certainly do all those things and evaluate those things as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
So there wouldn't be a limit just to identifying a site or location.
Because I know a key was to collect data and also survey current and wait list and, you know, and that kind of thing. So that would not preclude from that information gathering.
The focus groups, thank you.
Can I also add that as an evaluation team, you'd be working with staff? This group is similar to what the Arts Commission we recently did when we worked on presentation stuff, is they didn't meet individually, they met with us as teams and talked everything through. So something like a community gardens would probably meet with somebody from our staff, maybe from Mr. Ryan's staff, you know, to really look at and answer questions as you go along the process.
And so could it be hybrid as well? Let's say this team wants to do some meeting on their own, and then some of it, so for example, focus groups, I would insist staff have to be involved in that. Could there be hybrid work depending upon, like, comparative analysis doesn't need to draw upon staff labor to do that, for example?
So my comparison or equivalent would be what we recently did with the Arts Commission, where we got together, we talked some things out, and everybody kind of had their homework assignments.
Right.
Then we reconvened, we worked some more things out, everybody went back, had their homework assignments. So it was kind of this ongoing process where we would check in, some people would have these different tasks, or, you know, I'm assuming that's kind of similar to what you're referring to.
Great.
And Madam Chair, if I can just add to that, we can also include perhaps some of the garden center folks who have more of an expertise in gardening. There might be a master gardener, I'm not sure, but we can certainly, you know, having some people from that area would be helpful to be part of this evaluation team as well.
Oh, so the evaluation team can grow. Okay. Okay, great. Ms. Fatua, did you had a look on your face? No. Okay. Commissioner Ledger.
Since it's an evaluation team and not an ad hoc committee, then couldn't it be more than 3, just broken up into like 2 separate groups? Or was this discussed at the last meeting that I wasn't at?
When you're discussing Brown Act, and it's an item that pertains to your commission, you cannot have more than 3 discussing some particular item.
Okay, thank you.
So here's what I propose. I'm going to start this way, since Liz, you kind of showed your cards already, but what I wanted to do is to take an opportunity for people to say if they were still interested or not. And maybe if you weren't interested before, but now you really want to be a part of an evaluation team, it gives you an opportunity to express that. So Commissioner Garcia Arcos, are you still interested in being on the team? Okay. Vice Chair Wright? Still a no. Commissioner Ledger?
Can I be a sub?
You can be a maybe. All right.
Because I wasn't here at the last meeting, I don't feel like I should.
Oh, so you didn't get to weigh in?
I did it, and I don't think it would be fair for me to jump into wanting to be on a team that you guys have already discussed.
No.
So-
This is why we're doing this now. So it is fair. So if are you interested in being a part of the evaluation team?
I am.
Okay.
But I don't want to take somebody else's spot from them.
Okay, so Commissioner Ledger, still interested. Commissioner Kamala?
Yeah, I'm still in.
Commissioner Kamala is in. Commissioner Darn Parker, do you want to restate that? She's happy to take a step back. I am also happy to take a step back so that it makes space for other people. So I'm happy to do that. So I think we have our 3. Commissioner Houston isn't here to weigh in, so unfortunately in this instance, we'll vote on it, but I'll get to what I propose in a minute. I have one other question. Let's say those of us like myself who wanted to be a part of it, but happy to take a step back, but we have some ideas to contribute, suggest for consideration. What's the best way to weigh in?
The best way to weigh in is at the next meeting or whenever they discuss the item. That's when everyone can place comments.
Okay. So I would propose then that we agendize this so that we can do another brainstorming session before this evaluation team gets started. That's what I would propose.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So at the next meeting, maybe we can come up with the clear things we want to be able to identify, the questions we want to ask, maybe a QR code with questions. Woo! whatever. So yeah, that way we can know what we're asking for. I love it.
Great. Commissioner Ledger, does that?
I was going to say, so is it a Brown Act violation if, say, Chair Brown, sorry, I'm getting confused with the Brown Act, Brown Commissioner, if she were to text me saying this is something, and then I went to the team and said, hey, let's look at this, is that a Brown Act violation?
Yes, if you're discussing it and you get together, that's still a form of communication that would violate Brown Act.
Okay,
Chair,
thank you.
Chair
Just
Brown
wanted
is
to make
going to
sure.
weigh in at the next meeting.
No, I just want to make sure we have all bases covered, so thank you.
So,
Whoops, thinking about this, I brought this because, and I was going to pass it on to whoever did this. This arrived in the mail when we're talking about communication and QR codes, flyers. So this was great. It was gone throughout our neighborhood. Talked about open houses, input, and everything in Spanish and English. So I brought this because I was really kudos. But as you're looking at input,
and Commissioner Dorn Parker, thank you. One of the things when we agendize this for next meeting is we can talk about what kind of communications we might want to plan for, timeline, all of that. So I think we will put that on the agenda for next time. I make a motion that we approve an evaluation team that includes Commissioner Garcia Arcos, Commissioner Ledger, and Commissioner Kamala. Do I have a second?
I'm happy to be the second.
Commissioners may vote on your dais. Motion carries 6-0.
Yeah, this is very exciting, you guys. Okay, with that, any final, well, actually, we're not allowed final thoughts. So a reminder to those who may be watching this meeting later that our next meeting is on June 11th. And with that, I adjourn the meeting at 8:48 p.m. Thank you all.